Okay, so we're recording now. So y'all go ahead and say your names, what yours is school, and then your major.
Okay, well, I'm Oscar Galeana. I'm a junior at Portland State, and I'm a pre-health major.
My name is Janara Solis. I am a social work major, and this is my third year at Portland State.
Okay, what do you remember about the first time you visited the Cultural Resource Centers?
My first experience was I came with the Ganas program, so it was with a group of people, and I think it was one of the open house events, and there was food. I remember that. I remember the environment being very lively, but there was a lot of people coming in and out. And I remember I think there were stations and kind of just more of like a meet and greet of like what the centers were and like the people who worked there.
Yeah, my first time was probably for my interview that I had for the centers. It was in the summer, so there weren't a lot of students there, but yeah, that's kind of it.
Janara, what made you come back to the Cultural Resource Centers?
I think just the space that was there. There were a lot of people that looked like me. It was more of a community feeling, so I lived in housing my first year, and I didn't have, I just wanted a place to kind of study, but at the same time, I wasn't finding, a quiet or, kind of, I don't want to say, a safe space, but, a space where I could, feel comfortable in at the library, and so, I remember my mentor at the time was let's go to La Casa, which is one of the centers here, and she's like, let's just study here, and so we sat down, and we just got our work done, and then we just started meeting people. She introduced me to the students that were coming in and out, and so just, the familiarity of everyone, and just, the open space just kind of kept me coming back, and then meeting the coordinator of the center, and just all the other people in there just kind of had me coming back and forth mostly every day.
Who uses the Cultural Resource Centers, and why do you think that is?
To be honest, I think students that really don't know a lot of people here, and they're kind of feeling maybe like they don't belong or awkward at college, because usually you just go to college, you don't even talk to anybody, you kind of just sit down and you go to class. So if you're just doing that every day for 4 years, it would feel pretty lonely. So I feel like when people see the space and see the students interacting and having fun and socializing, they're like, yeah, this is a place where I can have fun for the next 4 years.
Yeah, I think a lot of the commuter students, since there's not a lot of spaces to study, there's the library, but it's not always open, and then there's areas here and there, but I think it's a big space for our commuting students, and just our students of color, especially because now that we have so many centers, I know it's kind of a community for them as well, and so yeah.
Why do you think some students of color do not use the Cultural Resource Centers?
I know I've heard that there's just not enough space sometimes. It's just I've heard that sometimes it can be just a little bit loud, but it's also, we have a lot of fun in the centers, but just because it's people that we know and people that gather together, just coming together. And I think if you're really looking for a quiet space, the centers might not be the right place, but it's a happy place to be at. And so one of the main things that I've heard is just it's not as quiet, or there's not enough space, and I think it's also the number of students of color that we have on campus. It's just the centers they're not as big as I think they should be.
I think just some students, like I said before, they're new to school, they don't know anybody, so even at the centers when they walk in, they still don't know anybody, and it's hard for people just to go up to someone and say, hi, this is who I am, here's my name, be friends. So even at the center, there still is that kind of weird awkwardness. I think it's easier just to approach someone in the centers, but maybe other students that are shyer, they still feel a little bit uncomfortable.
Have you ever heard of someone feeling unwelcome at the CRCs?
I have not.
Nope.
Have you ever heard a heated conversation about a social justice topic in the CRCs, and you were hesitant to join in on the conversation?
I have heard conversations about like class discussions that have happened about something that's happened like in a class that the professor didn't address or like among students in the class, and it's kind of like the student like letting their frustrations out. But I wouldn't say that it's among two students within the centers. I think it's kind of a way of students bringing what's going on in the classrooms into a safe space and kind of having those conversations among people who kind of understand like their similar stories and like their same frustrations.
I would agree with Janara. Most of the times where I've heard social justice topics being, talked about in the centers is when students are grieving or just want to say it out loud to people who are, in some sense, people of color as well. Because even though PSU is very diverse, it's also very white. Have a white population here at the school, so sometimes in class you want to say these things, but you feel uncomfortable because there are still a lot of white people around. So when you go into the centers, it's a little bit more familiar. It's a little bit more easier to talk about.
Some people of color find our spaces triggering. Why do you think that is?
Could you repeat that?
Some people of color find our spaces triggering. Why do you think that is?
Triggering in what way? Just like that we're here, that we have centers, it's triggering? Or?
Like they might not come to our spaces because they feel uncomfortable.
I don't know why that would be. I feel like any time that I have gone into any of these centers, like even like the Pan-African Commons or the PIA, like I feel comfortable going in there. It might not fit my cultural identity, but I know that if I walk in there, like I'll feel accepted either way, because it's just like I know that these centers welcome anyone, and like they recommend that you visit these centers to learn about like other cultural identities, and so I don't know really the triggers.
Well, I would understand it. I've worked in the centers for, this is going to be my third year. So it's easy for me to walk into any center that we have because I know the space and I know I'm going to be welcome and I know our values are open to everyone. But like La Casa Latina, if you see a lot of Hispanic people around and you're not Hispanic, you might walk in, feel a little bit uncomfortable, and I would understand that. I feel the same way when I walk into a room and it's a lot of white people. I get it. Maybe they just feel uncomfortable, so maybe it takes that one person to tell them, which should be a receptionist, just to say hi and everything, so they know that they're welcome into it. So I think they still feel a little awkwardness.
Are we asking now? What students is La Casa Latina for?
Well, it's open to all students. If you want the correct term, it's open to all students, but I know that there's more attraction and more, like we have more Latino, Latina, Latinx identifying students in the space, just because I feel like there's a large community within Portland State, and I know for me, like La Casa feels more like home and like more than any other place on campus, and so I know there's a wide attraction of those students that visit La Casa. But I know it's open to everyone, even community members that come in.
Yeah, it's open to everyone, but I mean, even just the name La Casa Latina, it's very, it's focusing towards Hispanic, backgrounds, Hispanic people, because, I mean, just having that one space on campus is good for us. It's good for the population that we have now, and it just increases our population and keeps on going.
Do you know what imposter syndrome means?
I don't know.
No, but if I would guess, I feel like it'd be someone who, or something that would pretend to be something or someone that they're not, and continue that.
Yeah, in short, it's kind of like, it's the feeling of if you enter a space or a community or a room where you feel that everyone else there knows a lot more than you. So it could be you start a new school and you start a class that seems difficult, and everyone in that class, you feel like they're all smarter than you. They know a lot more than you. Have you ever experienced that coming to an event or coming to one of our spaces?
So like knowing that other people have more knowledge about
feeling that other people had more knowledge and feeling that your knowledge wasn't as valuable or good enough to participate in something?
I feel like I have, but I don't think that there's anything wrong with that because I think it's an opportunity for you to learn, and if you have questions about it, like definitely go ahead and ask. I feel like that's why these events that the cultural centers put on are there for, so other people can learn about the experiences and just like have more awareness about what's going on.
I have definitely, even like in my own culture, like in my Latino culture, Hispanic culture, like I wasn't necessarily like raised upon like traditions that maybe people that come from Mexico do and have, and then I see them in la casa around and they're saying it, they're talking about it. So I've definitely felt that way just in my own culture. But then again, like Gennaro said, it's just like a way for me to grow and even learn more about like my background and everything.
Do you want to ask any other questions from the audience? Maybe ask them. Okay, so we have 2 questions here. We're going to pass it to you and go ahead and answer them as you can. You can work together, okay?
I'm trying to work with Gennaro.
You don't get this question.
Read the question out loud too, please.
What is the difference between race and ethnicity?
You want to answer this?
This is you. This is social work. What are you talking about?
Well, I know race is a social construct. It is something that was created in order to categorize people. I know it was early on, mainly during the slave times. Ethnicity, when I have a trickier time defining, but it's more of someone's, I don't want to say heritage, but it's how someone, how do I say this, like ties back into their roots, I guess. Going into, I don't know, I struggle with ethnicity.
Just say it.
No,
You got it.
no,
Just say it.
because I don't want to mess it up.
So,
What's your input?
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. Ethnicity is the one that's tripping me up. I feel like ethnicity is just like the background where you come from. Right? I think so.
Anything else?
Oscar, this is you.
This is so you.
That's
These
you!
Are, this whole interview is you, honestly. Please define social justice. What
I want to hear your input.
I didn't think about this. Well, not really.
Your pre-med.
I would say social justice is just important topics in our society that maybe aren't looked upon enough or talked about enough in our daily lives that we probably should talk about and should have more emphasis on input.
I think it's more finding what is equitable for everyone, and then being an ally, being an advocate for these topics that aren't represented through like marginalized communities and marginalized identities, and just finding what is best for everyone in an equitable way, I guess.
Have y'all used the term social justice before when talking to other people?
Probably. As a social work major, yeah, probably.
How do you think a new student who's coming to our centers who maybe has never heard that term feels when they might hear it being said a lot in one of our centers?
Can you repeat that?
Yeah. How do you think maybe a new student who's trying to check out our centers and kind of see what we're about, maybe they come to an event and they hear people talking about race and ethnicity and social justice, but they're not really sure what those things mean or they don't feel comfortable defining them. Could you imagine what they would be kind of feeling about our centers?
I think there might be some discomfort, especially if they're not familiar with the terms. But I think that also goes back into like finding resources or finding some way to like get them connected with people or other materials that might get them familiar with some of these terms, and then also letting them know, like, you know, like, you may not know what they mean, but here is someone, or here is this that you can, like, look upon or read upon, to just kind of get more information about. And if you're interested, like, here is this event, or here is this that's going on, and you're more than welcome to come if you feel comfortable enough.
Yeah, I feel like the centers is a good place for that, just for people just to learn more about stuff that they don't really know about or have questions about.
How can we reach out to the students who maybe feel a little bit of imposter syndrome when coming to our centers? Like, they come here and they might hear people talking about these things, and they might say, like, I don't know if that place is for me because I don't know that information, and maybe they're shy.
I think what the centers do a good job of doing is the outreach that they do for, like, the classrooms, because I know I've had Cynthia go into a couple of classes and be like, hey, this is what we do, this is our services, and we're open to all identities. And I know in class, like, students have asked, but I don't identify as this, can I go into your centers? Am I welcomed in these spaces? And I know just it's something that gets asked, but I think it's an okay question to ask, like, hey, you might not feel comfortable being in these centers, but just know that you're welcome. And I think just having that type of outreach and that type of message being sent, like, we're open and it's a inviting community, like, come and see what we're about. I think that's one of the best things that is being done.
I think probably the best way to do that is just by talking to students. So a student talking to another student about the center and everything. Because I'm gone at tabling for the centers and everything, and I feel like just having another student, someone that relates to them, would even get them more interested about the centers. Like, even just yesterday, I brought my coworker who didn't even know about the center. I just brought him down here and I showed him around. And he seemed more interested in it than someone just, you know, tabling, just saying, hey, come over here, and here comes this. So it gets you more familiar.
I would agree that student, like,
One-on-one
yeah.
communication.
So I know for, like, group projects, sometimes, like, we meet down here and, like, have, like, those discussions down here, just, like, inviting more students.
Do you all know of any other students, and you all as Latino students, like any other Latino students that maybe don't come to the centers, and maybe any reasons that they might have of why they don't?
Besides space.
Yeah.
I think just not being familiar with La Casa is another thing that I've heard. Like, they just, or like they've heard about it, but they've just never been down here, just for whatever reason.
I think it's just they don't know anybody.
Yeah.
Like I'm in the centers all day, not just because I work here, but all my friends come here too.
Mhm.
So we made it like our spot, you know. So I think them just not knowing anybody, it's easy for them just to class and then go home, class and then go home. They don't have anybody that we're gonna spend time with, and hang out with, or go lunch with.
But I feel like coming down here, like, you make friends, even though you might not know anyone, but it's such, like, a laid-back place that you can literally, like, especially when there's food, like, you can just talk to someone and just be like, hey, like, there's food downstairs, or hey, there's an event going on, and it's just, like, a way to kind of, like, build this friendship, even though, like, you may have never spoken to this person before. It kind of clears that way of, like, communication between two people.
Okay. Okay. Any